Hello folks, so following on from last week's video about season prep, where this week I'm going to talk a wee bit about how you maintain your mojo over the course of a long season. Obviously with sports such as triathlon, the best chance you have of getting good results is by training consistently and training regularly. Sometimes it can be difficult, but the best bet you have of having your very best season and getting your very best results is to train consistently week after week after week after week after week leading up to your races as the year goes on. Okay, but sometimes that can be difficult, so I've come up with a principle called the IMP Principle, and that's one for all of us Game of Thrones fans, which will hopefully help you remember the reasons why you took up the sport in the first place and help you push yourself out the door whenever you wake up some morning and it's maybe cold and dark or wet and you don't fancy heading out on the bike. If you remember this could be the difference between you getting that session in and missing that session completely, so it's worthwhile remembering. So we'll kick off then with the first letter. The acronym is IMP. The first letter is I, and the I stands for inspiration. Okay, so everybody has their own inspirations for taking part in this sport. It's a difficult sport. It's supposed to be difficult, and that's part of its appeal for us, is the difficulty involved with it. If it was easy, everyone would do it, but not everyone does this sport because it is difficult and time consuming and all the rest of it. So maybe you've been motivated to come and try a triathlon by something such as maybe you've seen the Iron War back in the 1980s between Dave Scott and Mark Allen, and you thought, oh my god, that was an amazing race, those two guys going head to head for so long, you know, that's inspired me to take up the sport. Maybe you're a more recent kind of supporter of triathlon and you've seen something like the Brownlees a few months back, where Johnny Brownlee was in the lead of the race and he was struggling towards the end and his big brother had to come to his rescue and carry him over the line. That was amazing. That would inspire anyone to take up the sport of triathlon if they watched it hard enough. Maybe you've seen Chrissy Wellington down the years smashing all the other women out of the park. No one could get near her. She was absolutely amazing athlete back in her day, and no one could compete with her whatsoever. Perhaps you're again more on the short course side of things. You see Gwen Jorgensen absolutely ripping it up at the Olympic and sprint level, and decimating the field with amazing run performances. So any of those things could be your inspiration to come here and try this sport, or maybe you just decided to try it because it's difficult, which is an inspiration in itself for some people. So the first one, inspiration. What got you to try out the sport in the first place? If you can remember that, you're going to be on a path which will bring you back to the reasons why you should get out and train again. The second one is the M, and the M stands for motivation. Okay, so everyone's got their own motivations for taking part in triathlon. Maybe you want to beat your own times, maybe you want to beat your friends, maybe you want to lose a bit of weight, maybe you just want to see your times getting better across the three disciplines. But everyone has got their own motivations. So you remember the motivation, and if you can compile that with the inspiration you had for taking up the sport in the first place, those are two very strong things which will help you train consistently. Okay, and the final thing, the P. The P stands for professionalism. Okay, so we're kind of, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but we're kind of referred to as age group athletes for those of us that don't do this professionally. You don't get paid to go out and perform and train and all the rest, but we're seen as age group athletes. You'll hear some people referring to age group athletes as weekend warriors. I really do not like that term. I think it's disrespectful to those people who commit week after week. Certainly I know that the guys that I coach, the guys that work with me, are not weekend warriors. They're not people that go out and train Saturday and Sunday only. My guys are 6-7 day a week warriors who train as well as doing work, as well as having a family life, as well as having other commitments, and there's an awful lot in there for you to contend with whenever you're trying to improve your physical performance also. So I think the term weekend warrior is a little bit disrespectful, and that'll never ever be something that I would refer to an age group athlete as, because we're much more than weekend warriors. So professionalism. Just because you don't get paid to do triathlon doesn't mean that you can't be professional. And being professional means going and doing the small things well. Okay, so practicing your transitions, making sure you get your nutrition right, making sure you have a look at the bike course of the event that you're going to go and race so that you're familiar with it. Things like that come into your professionalism. But professionalism also comes into daily training as well. So if you get a plan and your plan tells you that at 10 minutes in you need to go to zone 4 for 3 minutes, then you go to zone 4 for 3 minutes. You don't go, I'll go to zone 4 for 2 minutes and I'll have an extra minute of recovery. It means that you go to zone 4 for the time that you've been given, because that's going to be the difference between your performance being good and average on race day. The other thing about professionalism as well is when you're doing your intervals, you take your recovery period. You don't train to ego. Okay, so a lot of people train to ego. It's all about the pace, it's all about the speed they're doing on the bike. That's not the important thing. The important thing is making sure that you're rested and recovered enough to go and do another interval whenever the time dictates later on in the session. So those are some of the things about professionalism that you want to be thinking about. So if you could remember those things, the inspiration, the reason why you're here in the first place. Number 2, the motivation, the things that are motivating to get you to the start line and also out the door to train. And finally, your professionalism. If you can remember those 3 things, if you experience a morning where you don't actually fancy it all that much, it'll be an awful lot easier for you to get yourself out and do a session and do those tough sessions that make the difference later on in the season. I hope you find that interesting and useful. I'll be back again next week with something else.